Hi everyone, welcome back to Tea Time with Taryn. I'm Taryn, your host, and today it's gonna be all things tea. So just me, I'm gonna be drinking my tea, I'm gonna be spilling my tea, and I'm just gonna be talking actually about me and my disabilities of dyslexia today. Great topic and so much to dive into, so hang with me as we're gonna move through a really long timeline from first grade all the way to 26 now. And that's how old I am. So just bear with me on this journey. It's going to be probably a little chaotic and a little like this, but then it will all come together. So just ride it. Just ride it. But before we get into that, we are going to drink my tea today and taste my tea of what I'm drinking. I'm studying Chinese medicine, and I'm using herbal medicine, Chinese herbs, to support my body through this time. And right now, I'm drinking a lot of yang tonics. I usually run a little bit more kind of deficient, especially with that yang qi. I take Lexapro and Adderall for my anxiety and depression and ADHD. So taking those kind of drugs, they make me run a little bit colder and kind of burn out that yang in a sense. So always needing that extra boost for my yang qi. And yeah, let's give it a taste. Yeah, it's pretty sweet today. Pretty neutral. Nothing like really standing out to me, but the sweetness is a part of that kind of tonic, supporting, nourishing, boosting, getting that yummy sweetness from real herbs, not artificial sweetness. Very different. Anywho, let's dive into dyslexia. Dyslexia, man. That's how I feel. Like dyslexia and having a dyslexic brain is like that. Like you are constantly running through different hoops and directions because there's no like we don't go from point A to point B direct pathway, right? It is like let's see the big picture, let's go this way, that way, in between, like truly this. Like I really don't know how else to describe it, but that we are like, and then we'll come to the conclusion. But we have to run all these other courses before that conclusion. It's beautiful. It really is, because I believe that it makes me think in such a unique way, in such a broader way than just going from boom to boom. That is so black and white. Me, I'm like, yeah, well, maybe, I don't know. What about that? Who? Huh? Yeah. So it's beautiful. And at the same time, it's so hard to fit into society and into like school norms, is where I've experienced a lot of my struggles. And now that I'm older, a little bit into like real life too, I have a better understanding of myself, but it's still there, right? It's still like, it's a part of me, and I've learned so much over time how to navigate it and how to work with it instead of against it. We're going to go into a story time here. We're starting from first grade all the way to where I am now. Try to keep it short, but no promises, because I like to chit chat and I like to overshare. So, first grade, I was not formally diagnosed with dyslexia at the time, but was told that I process things slower. I pretty much, that's it. They just were like, you process things slower, it takes you more time. And I was like, yeah, but my internal thoughts were like, does that make me dumb? Am I dumb because I'm taking more time to think about things? No. But at the time, I was like, I feel that way. That's how I feel. No one's explaining to me like why it's taking me slower and like why am I not getting it right now, which is kind of ironic because given the circumstances of like I need to know why things are happening and nobody was telling me that. So super frustrating. During that time though, pretty much all the way from first grade to college, I had a private tutor. Was very lucky that my mom right away noticed that I needed extra help, noticed that like she couldn't necessarily give me that, and provided me with that extra help. And truly, I think to this day, it's like one of the reasons why I got through school and actually enjoyed school with having a learning disability. So I was the kid that got pulled out of the classroom to go to the separate reading area to read, to do the things. My worst fear was reading out loud in class. Hated that. Why do we do that? Why do we do that? Especially when you know me has a learning disability. I don't want to read out loud in front of the classroom, and I still don't to this day because I can't do that. The way that I read is so much different than the normal person, right? I'm reading more in large picture. I may be skipping over a few words that I don't know how to pronounce, but I'm going to use the context clues to understand what I'm reading. So me reading out loud, not helpful for me, more anxiety, and not helpful for anybody else because it's not going to be clear. It's not going to make sense. I'm going to ask a million times, how do you say that word? Period. But no wonder I have anxiety because that was so anxiety inducing and I hated it. And I hated it from day one all the way till now. And it's crazy that that is something that we preach in the classroom. Maybe not anymore because things are a little bit different now, but still. Also, another thing that in elementary school that literally sent me was having to do AR reading. Like, I understand the purpose of it, and at the same time, like, just knowing that some of my classmates were reading like Harry Potter and like had like 60 points for their AR, which is where you like read or you take this test and then the teacher like examines the test of like your reading comprehension, and then how much did you get right determines how quick you read. And I don't really know the details of it, but from there they give you a higher point to reach if you are a good reader. For me, it was like I had to read one book for the like half the year to make my goal of like 10 points. And that still was really hard. And at the time, like audiobook wasn't as big as it is now, but my mom would literally read out loud to me because, again, that reading comprehension of me trying to read and then comprehend what I just read, it's pretty hard for somebody who has dyslexia. Now, a little bit different if, for me, if somebody is reading out loud to me and I'm following along on the book. That is a little bit more digestible, right? I'm able to hear what they're saying. It's coming in as like a fluid, read, versus mine would be like, I would read a word or I'd get stuck on like the word the. Sounds so simple, but I'd literally just stare at it and be like, how do you say that? And then I would go into my internal spiral and my thoughts and being like, I'm so dumb. Cool, right? It's so fun having dyslexia. It's like, it's crazy. It's literally the craziest thing. And I love it. So we made it through elementary school. I don't know how, but we did. And middle school then was very scary. I was like, how am I going to do the next level of school? This is going to be so hard. At the time it was. Looking back at it, but at the time it was. And I was even put into like an extra reading class. So like I didn't take an elective. I was put into another class where we would do either review of what we did in our English class, or we would go over, things that maybe we need to read or kind of practice reading, which realistically I didn't necessarily need to be in that class because I did have my outside tutor. But at that time, like my tutor and I, we were working on just like everyday classwork. Like we were no longer doing the dyslexia kind of like traits to better my reading comprehension or sounding out words or anything like that. Like at the time, once I got to pretty much like 6th grade to like college, we were strictly working on how can we get through this assignment? How can I know what I'm doing, study for the test, understand the information, the material, and all through also that like dyslexic brain, right? That time with my tutor allowed me to use my brain in the way that it needed to work and not in necessarily the standard format that school projects, right? School is for everybody, and it's not one size fits all though, because I needed a different type of schooling. I needed more visuals. I needed less pressure on me reading out loud, like things like that. So going back to this 7th grade class, it was just where I was at, and I felt a lot of shame around being in that class. There was a lot of men in the class. I shouldn't say men, boys in the class at that time. And most of the time I was the only girl in these like kind of disability settings with reading comprehension and reading things. And also right there, that it feels very like isolating. Now I'm the only girl in there. Now I'm like the only one who think like, now I'm the dumb girl who doesn't know how to read in these classes. Is really a lot of like what I was identifying myself with, which is so sad. Like, that's so sad. And no wonder those thoughts stuck with me for so long. Like, I felt so isolated. Ugh. It was scary. It was like discouraging. It was a lot of my unknown, because at this time I still wasn't formally diagnosed with dyslexia. I mean, I had gone through many formal like testing things, but was never really told exactly what was going on. No one like sat me down and like named it for me, or maybe they did and I blacked it out because I was so anxious and afraid of being different. Now in middle school, right, I have these accommodations. I'm trying to use them a little bit more regularly, and like all my professors or teachers knew that I had these accommodations, but nothing felt honored, right? Nothing was like being honored. And I think that's because I was still getting straight A's. Like, I was a really good student. And at the same time, nobody knew the behind the scenes that I was working with. I was working again with my tutor. I was working with my parents. I was working for myself to get good grades. I thought that was important, and I wanted to do good in school. I wanted to like school. And so there was a lot of this like, I feel like people don't believe me that I have this or need this because I'm doing good in school, but like no one's giving me my accommodations that I deserve, and just felt like things weren't being honored. Because there was this one time in 8th grade, and I will never forget this one time, because my grandma had just passed away that morning, and I went to school. Don't know why, but I did. And I was literally in my first period in history. I was sitting like probably the 6th row back. I remember exactly. We were reading a history book. I got called on to read, and I just started bawling. Like, I just started bawling. I was like, no way. They're making me read right now. 1, the school knows my grandma just died. 2, I'm dyslexic. 3, you're not honoring my freaking accommodations, where it's not allowed for me to read out loud. And I just feel like a lot of the times, like, because I wasn't participating out loud in class, teachers didn't think that I was fully engaged. But I'm like, I'm listening. I just don't have anything to say yet because I'm trying to process all this information that you're giving me. And you're giving me also no space to do that, because now I'm pressured to read, right? So I had to read out loud that day. I remember that I literally could not read like 2 words without not knowing the next word. And I also think that was the first time that I fully, oh, I'm getting a little emotional. That was the first time that I fully allowed myself to just break down over this. I was like, my grandma just died. I'm like 12 years old. You're asking me to read out loud at 8 in the morning. Terrible. Like, truly traumatic. I'm like shook just even repeating this. It was terrible. And that was the first time that I really was just like, why isn't anybody honoring me and what I'm going through right now? Not only in my accommodations, but also in real life. And how these two just really affect one another. And then we move on to high school. And I had the same thoughts of like higher level schooling. Am I going to be able to do this? I don't know. We'll see. And at this point, I had to prove and submit in more paperwork that I was truly dyslexic. Again, a lot of the times I think people saw my good grades and didn't believe my dyslexia, which, what do you mean? Like, the reason why I'm getting these good grades is because my accommodations, is because of my tutor. So luckily my tutor was able to, because she did specialize in learning disabilities and whatnot, she was able to retest me and submit in more paperwork of like, I mean, at that point we had been working together since like 3rd grade. And that's when I was like fully diagnosed, but like really it was like me understanding that like, oh, I'm not just like a slow learner. That's one of the traits of dyslexia, but that's not all of it. And that was the first time that I was like identified as dyslexic. And I was like, I don't know how to respond to this because that seems like a bad thing. And it's not. But that's what I was thinking. High school was hard for many reasons. And at the time, I was happy AR was over. I was still upset that I sometimes had to read out loud. I learned about audiobooks, and that really started to help me. I also had 2 sets of textbooks, one to keep at school and one to take home, which really just saved my body from physically carrying those textbooks. And high school was really a blur. And I don't really know how I got through it, but I still felt very different. I started to use my extra time a lot more, so getting extra time on assignments to turn in, and started saying like, oh yeah, like I was always finishing my assignments because I was taking them to my tutor to help me, which was fabulous. And I was understanding the information because she taught it to me again, and we were able to go through it, and I felt comfortable to ask questions in that setting. But then this is like the first time that then people started to be a little bit more aware of my accommodations and being like, oh, you're so lucky you get extra time. And for some reason I was like, but you guys don't understand why I'm getting extra time. Like, it's not just because. Like, I need this extra time. I need these extra tools, like, to make my life easier, not because I'm lazy. And I think that's when that really started to set in, that, like, I was like, well, now I'm just being seen as lazy because I'm taking all these extra tools and extra things. Again, not true, but at the time, that's what I was feeling, and that's what I was thinking, and that's where then I think a lot of my like ADHD probably started to develop as well. And the anxiety and depression, that was just constantly building through a lot of this dyslexia. So we made it through high school. But senior year, I started to apply to college. And again, I was like, there's no way that I can go to college. I can't do that. I'm not smart enough, right? That was then the mindset that started coming in, that I was not smart enough. it was a real thought. I didn't think I was smart enough because of my dyslexia, right? Because I was always feeling that I was behind. I wasn't good enough. I couldn't get through the finish line. I couldn't do these things. I couldn't do these assignments. I needed extra help to do the assignments. Again, today, not true. At the time, very true. Very real for me. Very real feeling. So, applying to college, I was like, what am I going to study? I'm like, I'm not doing business. I don't know business. Like, the only thing that I felt like I could go to college for was dance. And even then, I was like, am I good enough? I don't know. But I ended up going to college for dance. And I think that was the best thing for me because I got to move my body every day. And I got to think differently than what I was thinking in school, right? We started to write about dance performances, and I got to start to like develop my own language of like how I want to describe things that I'm seeing and feeling. And it really just opened up a lot of doors for me. And as much as it challenged my confidence, it also really boosted my confidence at the same time because I was no longer just the dancer, right? I was in a room with dancers, but I was also the dyslexic dancer. And of course, again, I will never freaking forget first day intro to dance studies, sitting front row, like right in front of the teacher, professor, whatever. And she was like, can somebody read this out loud for me? She was like, Taryn, can you read this out loud? And at this time, I didn't know how to say no, clearly. And so I was like, heart dropped right out my booty. And I was like, oh my God, I have to read out loud. In college! Why are we reading out loud in college? Why are you picking on somebody to read out loud in college? Mind blowing. But again, I didn't know how to say no, so I just said, okay, sure. So I start reading. Can't read half the words. I'm like pausing to wait for her to say what the word is. And I just felt like I felt so bad about myself. I felt like, again, super dumb. I felt just like, I just felt really bad about myself. And then I'm in a dance class, so those were small. And it's, like probably 10 of my peers. And now all I'm thinking is, wow, people must think, how did she get into Chapman? Why is she here? She can't even read. Nobody was probably thinking that, or maybe if they were, right? But that was the internal dialogue that started to spin in my head. And then I was like, how can I prove to these people that I am good enough and I am worthy to be here? Girl, what? What are you proving? I tried to prove so much to myself and to the people around me that I was good enough and this dyslexia wasn't going to stop me. Well, it didn't. And it just, I wasn't using it as my superpower. I was using it as something that was wrong with me. And that put a lot of stress on my mental health. Yeah, it did. Because of many reasons, like I've been saying. And so in college, like I had to apply for my accommodations. I got my accommodations, but through this time, like I was rarely using them because I was like, I can do it. I can do it. I can prove to myself. I can prove to everybody that I don't need them. Girl, just take the accommodation. You need it. And I only know that now, being in grad school. We made it through college. I mean, halfway through it was online, so it started to not matter, but I was still using my tutor from back home to help with my essays. So a lot of the times I would just like write my essays and then she would edit them and kind of revise them. Always my original thoughts, but just in the correct grammar format because, again, as a dyslexic person, like grammar makes no sense to me. And you can probably tell from the way that I speak, right? It's very all over the place. It doesn't have that clear through. Well, there's always a clear through line, but it doesn't go from that point A to point B. It's very sporadic because my brain doesn't make that connection. Just like it's, again, this. So my tutor really helped me through that process of letting me just write down my thoughts, and we had such a good relationship that she also knew who I was and what I was trying to say, and would just kind of revamp it to fit into that like collegiate level of writing, because at the end of the day, that was above my pay grade. That's above my brain. So from there, I graduate college. You'd think at this point, like, I would believe that I am smart, but I didn't. I made up all the excuses of why I'm not smart and why I can't say things. And after that, I graduated, was at a really weird place in my life, and also mentally just not doing well. Lots of therapy. And I was talking to my therapist, and she was like, well, maybe you should start going to get acupuncture. And so I was like, okay, yeah, like at this point, I'm going to do anything, because physically I'm not feeling well, mentally I'm not doing well. At that time, I had a really weird relationship with dance and my body, and it was COVID. So like, it really was not a great time for me. And I'd just come out of like a super toxic household during that time. So again, all the things were adding up of like, I feel terrible. So I said, okay, sure, I'm going to go try acupuncture, see how it goes. And I didn't like my acupuncturist, but I loved acupuncture. And I was like, I can see how this is going to help me, but I need to find a new acupuncturist. And then at the time I moved to LA and started to build my life here in LA, and found an acupuncturist and was enjoying that and was just loving the medicine so much. Like, I just felt the medicine and it was so good for me and so healing. And I was like wanting to know a little bit more about it. So then I'm talking to my therapist again. We're having sessions. We're trying to work through what I'm going through. And she was like, well, like, where do you want to go with your career? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, dance isn't something that I am passionate about anymore at that time. And I don't know where to go. She was like, you should go to grad school. I said, girl, what? I'm not smart enough. Again, that was the story that I was telling myself. And she was like, Taryn, we gotta unpack this. It's like, ah. So it wasn't until that I decided to go to grad school that I really understood my dyslexia and how much it has affected me mentally. And so now I'm in grad school. And I apply, I get in. It's all great. I don't ask for my accommodations right away. I don't do it. I don't ask for my accommodations. And like, it's fine. I'm just going to figure it out. Why? I don't know. Like, so annoyed with myself then. Like, why didn't I just do it? Like, it's there. I literally have all the stuff to send, right? And so then my paperwork was all over the place. Like, I never just had like one file to send, and it was like crazy paperwork from first grade and like using crazy fonts, and it just, nothing of it felt real. Like, it didn't feel real. And so then I was like, all right, I think in order for me to really feel confident about my accommodations and asking for them and about my diagnosis, I need to go get retested. So, first time tested in first grade. Fast forward, second time tested, 24 years old, maybe 25. And I was like, okay, we're going to go get tested. We're going to go get tested again for dyslexia and for my ADHD, because that was somewhere in all my old reports. There was mention of ADHD and mention of anxiety and depression. So those have been there since day one. Here we are in my new testing, getting tested, and it was so funny and so just like, it's not me. It's really not me. It's really my like it is me, but it's not my internal thoughts of me. So part of the testing with dyslexia is like reading words, sounding them out, repeating them back, or hearing words and repeating them, the sounds back, like all the things you would think of when you go to read, right? All the skills that you use. We're working through this. All these emotions and tendencies and like reminders of my younger self come up because the testing is the same. My response is the same. I'm much smarter than I was in first grade, and I still can't do this. I still can't read. Like, I can read, but like, I still can't sound things out. I don't know how to spell. All those like dyslexic traits of, I don't know how to do this. Like, my brain does not comprehend this. And comprehension, reading a paragraph and then answering questions. I was like, I don't know. And like, I literally could not tell you. So I get my results back and we go over them. And she was like, so you have like both types of dyslexia. And I'm surprised you even made it this far and are in grad school now because this is kind of crazy. And I was like, what do you mean? And the way that she just kind of explained it to me in a very simple way is that there's like both like the auditory and like the visual. So hearing things, letting that go in, processing in the brain, seeing it, that kind of vibe. And she's like, you have both, but it's not very clear, right? So sometimes people just like visually can't see it, but they can hear it, or vice versa. And so since I have both, like it was very confusing growing up because some things would work and then other times things weren't working. And it was always just, again, all over the place. Hence why I'm like all over the place. And I was like, this is so fascinating and also so affirming for myself. And then through that, I had now just one document that it stated everything that I needed. And I got to put in special new accommodations for learning Chinese medicine because there's a language barrier there. And I was like, okay, I'm going to submit this now. So I submit it to my school and they're like, great, no problem. You're just going to have to always talk to the professors to get your accommodations. So every time I have to explain myself why I need this accommodation versus the school being like, hey, she has the paperwork to prove it. These are accommodations that you have to give to her. Then my school shut down. So then we transferred, and now I'm at a new school, and the accommodation system is so much better. I do not have to contact the professors to get my accommodations. Somebody else does that. Rightfully so, right? Like they have my paperwork, and the professor doesn't even know why I need these accommodations. Like, I just need them. And I've been using my accommodations now. And life has been so much easier. Like, so much easier. It's insane. Now I'm like, wait, why wasn't I doing this before? It's so silly. So a few of the accommodations that I'm using is extra time. Realizing that the extra time either on test or assignment just allows me to have the space to maybe let my brain kind of wander off and then come back in. Also just kind of taking off that pressure of that test anxiety and this like idea that I have to be quick with the information when it's like nothing about me is quick. Like I'm not quick to get moving. I like to move at a slower pace of just life and things, hence slower at learning things. Just process differently. It's not my fault. It's just how I was born. So extra time has been huge. Also, a private room for my testing is something that I've really enjoyed because, again, I can process things out loud. So if I just need to start speaking it, need to put it out there, like get my thoughts, some of it just out of my system, so then I can get to the right answer. I would say the other accommodation that I really enjoy is something that's very new that I asked for. Instead of having to write a reflection or like, read an article and write a reflection is pretty much what it is. I get to send in a voice memo because speaking my thoughts out loud is a lot easier than writing them down. Going back to why my tutor would take my thoughts and then make it look pretty on paper, because I don't know the structure of a sentence. And no matter how many times I've tried to learn the structure of a sentence, like, it doesn't make sense to me. To me, like, that flow doesn't make sense. And so having the ability to just speak it, so much easier. Hence why I like speaking to a camera and talking through my thoughts. Hence why I like therapy, right? Like, all these things make sense and really connect back to this root part of me of being dyslexic and like needing to have the ability to express my dyslexia and not suppress it and think that I have to fit into this society norm. And now in my adulthood and realizing that like these accommodations also aren't just for school, but can be put into the workforce. Like, I know there's at some point like an urgency in work, so maybe not the extra time, but finding different ways to use that. And I think that is also ultimately why I'm now in acupuncture. I mean, for many reasons of why I want to become an acupuncturist and herbalist, but ultimately, like, I get to run my own business at the end of the day. I get to have my own practice, and I get to do ways that make sense for me, and it doesn't have to make sense to anybody else. So, whether you're dyslexic or not, whether you're dealing with any type of other disability, whether that be visible or invisible, maybe you're dealing with something else. At the end of the day, like, that is part of you. And that took me so long to understand that, like, this is me. And the more that I accept this part of me, instead of trying to change it or get rid of it or ignore it, like, the easier life is. And the more enjoyable I feel in my body and in my mind is that, like, this is me. And nobody can take that away from me. And the more that I'm confident in this, the easier life is, and the more enjoyable I find school, learning, reading, of just leaning into my power of it and allowing myself just to be in this world, because I only get one life that I remember, that I'm currently living. I only get one body, one mind. And I just want to live my life from this body and mind. And I just want to do me. And part of that is being dyslexic. Yeah! Whew. That was a journey. And really fun one. And if you were able to follow along in that chaos, props to you. Maybe you got a little spice to you as well. Which is fabulous. Well, my tea was great. Thanks for coming. See you next time on Tea Time with Taryn. Bye.